I call this meeting to order. Please stand for a flag salute and a moment of silence. Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Muros.
Present.
Commissioner Pollock-Rood. Present. Commissioner Circo.
Present.
Commissioner Sopine.
Present.
And Commissioner Edison.
Present.
Great, thank you. Welcome to the El Cajon Planning Commission meeting. This meeting is being live streamed on the City of El Cajon website. Appeals of final decisions of the Planning Commission made this evening must be filed in writing with the City Clerk before 5 p.m. Monday, May 15th, 2023, and must include the payment of a filing fee. If you wish to speak on either a non-agenda or agenda item tonight, please fill out the request to speak card located by the agenda and turn it in to the secretary, who will call you up to speak when the agenda item comes forward for public comment. We ask that you give us your name, spelling your last name. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. The display on the podium, as well as other monitors in the chamber, will show time counting down. At 30 seconds, the podium clock readout will turn red, signifying you have 30 seconds until the end of your time. Applicants and individuals representing groups of people may be allowed more time if appropriate. All public hearing comments should be addressed to me as the chair of the commission and not to individual commissioners or staff members. Please turn off all electronic devices if you have not done so already. Pursuant to City Council Resolution number 117-79, a commissioner who has received evidence related to a matter before the Planning Commission other than an unescorted view of the subject property is required to disclose such information at the hearing. At this time, we will take comments from any member of the public on any item of business within the jurisdiction of the Commission that is not on the agenda. Under state law, no action can be taken on items brought before under public comment, except to refer it to staff for administration or place it on a future agenda. If there's anyone who wishes to address the Commission under public comment, please come forward now. All right, seeing that there is none, we will move on to the consent calendar. A single motion will cover all items on the consent calendar. Does the Commission wish to pull any items on the consent calendar?
No.
All right. To staff?
No changes from staff.
Great. Okay.
I move to adopt the minutes.
All right. Motion made by Commissioner Circo, second by Commissioner Pollock-Rood. Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of members present.
Great. Thank you. All right, next agenda item is agenda item number 2. This is 1274 Oakdale Avenue, Best Inn and Suites. The request is to consider revocation of deemed approved status for a lodging establishment. It is CEQA exempt. Staff recommendation, revoke deemed approved status. Staff?
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Noah Alvey presenting this item. Again, this is a request to consider revocation of the deemed approved status for the lodging establishment at 1274 Oakdale Avenue. It's a motel, and it's currently branded as Best Inn and Suites. So the site is located on the north side of Oakdale Avenue. It's between Oakdale Lane and North 2nd Street. On this aerial map, the site is shown in yellow. Overall site is 1.3 acres in size. The motel includes 32 rooms. It also includes a caretaker unit. The building centrally located on the property and then surrounded by parking and driveways. The site is governed by a specific plan. It's specific plan number 51. It originally governed all the properties on the north side of Oakdale Avenue, which includes the vacant lot to the west, as well as the IHOP and then the Valvoline oil change to the east. The specific plan did require approval of a conditional use permit for the motel, and that conditional use permit was issued in 1967. It's conditional use permit number 252. The other adjacent uses, as shown on the aerial map here, are Interstate 8 to the north, and then there's a mixture of residential uses to the southwest, and then commercial uses to the southeast. So just as a reminder, the deemed approved lodging establishment ordinance was approved by the City Council on June 25th of 2019, and it does confer deemed approved status on all existing lodging establishments. It also requires compliance with performance standards, and it creates a mechanism for the Planning Commission to modify or revoke a deemed approved status for problem properties. The overall purpose of the ordinance is to provide a common set of expectations and standards that all lodging establishments must abide by, and to provide guests with clean and safe lodging, and to minimize nuisance or criminal activity that's commonly associated with temporary lodging. So the performance standards required by the ordinance are shown here, and they generally require registration and management requirements, security measures, property standards, limitations on nuisance activities, and then ensuring proper transient occupancy tax collection. So the purpose of tonight's hearing is really related to a notice of violation that was issued on March 29th. After that notice of violation was issued, the revocation hearing was scheduled. It was primarily due to alleged illegal drug activity that occurred on March 29th. Following the issuance of the notice of violation, staff also conducted a review of calls for service over the past year. That was based on the date that the notice of violation was issued, so from March 30th of 2023 going back to March 30th of 2022. In total, there were 127 calls, but only 54 of those calls shown here were confirmed to be related to medical and nuisance activities that were occurring at the site. So we do have Darren Forster with the police department. He's joined us tonight. At this time, I'd like to invite him down to the dais. He can provide some additional background with regards to the drug activity and then answer any questions. And then following his testimony, I can complete the staff presentation with some additional information on more recent activities.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Darren Forster. I'm a lieutenant with the El Cajon Police Department. And the reason I'm here tonight is to talk about an incident that happened on March 29th of this year. An officer pulled over a vehicle for a traffic violation close by 1274 Oakdale. The officer found out that the driver of the vehicle was on probation, and a probation search was conducted, and an illegal weapon and some methamphetamine were located. The driver of the vehicle told the officer that he is staying with a friend that was on the county voucher program over at the Best Inn and Suites at 1274 Oakdale. Because this person was staying, he said that's where he had been staying for some time, officers went back over to that location to conduct a probation search on that person's room. Before they had a chance to make contact at that person's room that he gave us, they saw another male come out of the room. They contacted him and found that he was in possession of methamphetamine. They arrested the second person. Then they made contact at the room. Inside that room was two more males. One of them was the occupant that was renting the room on the program. And both of those gentlemen were also in possession of methamphetamine. One of them a large enough amount to be considered for sales. Which was, I believe, around 38 grams of methamphetamine. The second subject in that room, the officers found he was also on probation, and he had rented a room also at the same establishment. So they conducted a probation search at that person's room and found another gentleman inside that room who was also in possession of methamphetamine. So a total of 5 people were arrested that day for weapons charges or methamphetamine. Approximately 40 grams of methamphetamine were seized by the police department, and using the district attorney's standards on charging, that's anywhere from 400 to 800 doses of methamphetamine. So the one person that had the largest amount was charged for sales, and since then we have seen an uptick in activity in that area. So officers do at times from the 2nd Street corridor all the way down to that area have been doing enforcement There are a lot of nuisance calls that we do get, and I would believe that on-site security in that area, I know the parking lot across sometimes has security that gets some of that criminal element out of the parking lots and stuff like that, but that would greatly help the police department in calls for service out to establishments like this. Just up for any questions now if you have any.
Yeah, go ahead.
On that specific call for service, how many in total had a police contact? I know you had 5 were arrested, but how many in total were contacted?
5.
5 were contacted, 5 were arrested.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was just curious. Did you guys know anything about the call for death that was out there?
I do not know.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Great. Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to continue on with the staff presentation, at this time I want to address the response to the notice of violation. So on April 19th, staff did receive a response from an attorney that's representing the property owner. The attorney is present tonight, and we've been in communication since that time. The response did include some pictures that are shown here. It also indicated that the parking lot had been seal coated and work to improve the exterior was occurring. It also indicated a new cleaning schedule for the lobby and exterior had been established, new guest registration procedures, and human trafficking training was completed with the certificates provided to staff. Additionally, the response also indicated that exterior lighting was upgraded and new door locks were added for security and were installed and shown here. The response also noted a security patrol company was hired from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. and that they were on call 24 hours per day. Lastly, as shown here, 20 security cameras were installed at the property, and a new hard drive was installed to allow video retention for up to 1 month. Staff just really wanted to acknowledge these efforts and appreciates the work that's been done by the applicant in response to the violation notice. So as that said, staff did conduct a site visit on April 26th and identified some additional items that needed to be addressed. First here you can see some property maintenance issues that included additional painting and landscape maintenance. Staff would note that as of today, the area shown on the left side has been painted, and they've been working on painting, moving on, I think, up to and including today. Staff also observed some code violations, which included an unauthorized ocean-going container, which is shown here, as well as an unauthorized sign. As of today, staff did confirm that the sign had been removed, so that item has been addressed. And then staff also observed an unauthorized structure in the parking lot and some outdoor storage that was going on underneath on the first floor in between the two buildings. And then lastly, staff observed what appears to be a converted balcony into an expanded room and some fencing that needs to be repaired. Also, as of today, the fencing was removed. Late this afternoon, staff also received an email from the applicant's representative confirming the items that I just confirmed that have been addressed. A copy of that email was been provided at the dais, so you have that in front of you. So this slide shows staff's recommendation. Staff is recommending that the Planning Commission revoke the motel's deemed approved status and then request that the operator, property owner, and employees complete certain activities within the next 30 days, and then direct staff to schedule a public hearing to consider an amendment or revocation of conditional use permit number 252 within the next 90 days. Staff would like to note that the motel can continue operating while the Planning Commission considers an amendment or revocation of conditional use permit 252 in the future. The recommended actions for the next 30 days are shown here, and they request that the applicant prepare an operations and management plan, complete the remaining property maintenance issues identified by staff, along with conducting a site inspection in conjunction with the building official, really to take a look at that upstairs balcony that potentially had been converted and any other issues. And then we would ask that they resolve the code violations by either removing those unauthorized items or obtaining permits. So as an example, we could issue a temporary use permit for the ocean-going container in conjunction with temporary rehabilitation activities. It's just that they need to go through that process. Additionally, we're asking that they sign an affidavit acknowledging the requirements and standards of the deemed approved lodging ordinance, provide a monthly report to the Community Development Department regarding individuals participating in any emergency housing placement programs. And then we're asking that they complete human trafficking training offered by CSA San Diego. We've acknowledged the receipt of the human trafficking training that they have completed. We're still in discussion with CSA San Diego. They provide services to the city, and we're looking to see if we can get something that is more tailored towards East County and El Cajon so that we can bring that human trafficking training closer into the issues that we're experiencing here in El Cajon. So we're going to continue to look at that as an option, but then we have the training certificates that they've already completed as well. So lastly, I just again want to acknowledge the efforts of the owner and the operator to address the items that were in the staff report. Obviously, the staff report was just published late last week, and they obviously completed a lot of work over the weekend to address some of those issues. So that concludes staff's presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Great. Had a question on the, is the RV still there in the parking lot?
As of today, there was a gray RV that was parked in the westerly portion of the parking lot.
Is that the same one that's in the picture?
I believe so.
Okay.
But I believe it has moved.
Okay, and then the temporary use permit on the container, how long would a temporary use permit last?
So the zoning ordinance allows the Director of Community Development to determine an appropriate length. So we would be looking at the applicant to commit to a certain construction schedule. And so we would issue a permit that was appropriate based on a schedule that they provide to us, but typically not more than 6 months.
Okay. Questions for staff?
Yes, I'm looking at the email that you received that we have here in front of me. And it says that on the agenda, it says there were 127 calls. Mm-hmm. And instead, the real number is 79 calls. What is the discrepancy here between?
So I think we tried to allude to it in the staff presentation. The 127 calls, when a call gets registered, it gets registered based on the closest address that's nearby. And so there was a number of calls that were attributed to 1274 Oakdale Avenue that were occurring either in the street, or maybe they were traffic stops, or sometimes it's a pedestrian that flags down an officer. So we went through all 127 of those calls. On the sheet, or excuse me, on the PowerPoint presentation, you saw that there was a total of 54 calls that were directly related to medical issues as well as nuisance-related calls. So it was staff's determination that only 54 of those 127 calls could be attributed to the motel.
And the other question that I have is, I notice here that there are 32 units at this motel and 127 calls. The one that we heard last time that we met, I believe that motel had 170 units, if I'm correct, and 364 calls. So the ratio between the two is almost the same.
So I think the important thing on the metric for the ratio of calls to rooms, we're only looking at those medical and nuisance-related calls. So in this instance, we would be only attributing the 54 calls and correlating that to the 32 rooms, which would equate to approximately 1.6 calls, a little bit over 1.6 calls per room. So they are above the metric that we discussed at the last meeting, that putting into the zoning ordinance of 1 call per room.
Right.
But they're obviously taking steps to address some of those issues.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? All right, well, at this time, let's go ahead and, yes.
One question. I don't know if you could answer this question, or maybe they could answer on site, but I know that in the call that they had extra bodies per room, and I don't know if they have it registered as to who's supposed to be in those rooms. If they have extra bodies in the rooms, then, are they having any sort of moderation of who's supposed to be in the room so everybody's accounted for? So I think that would help some of the activity if they knew who was going and if there's people that aren't supposed to be there, then they need to leave.
Sure. That's one of the things that we're trying to address through the operations and management plans.
Okay.
So we have not received an operations and management plan for this location, but we have received one for a different location. We provided comments addressing that exact type of thing.
Okay.
And so that's where there's kind of that nexus between the deemed approved status and the conditional use permit. So if the Planning Commission revokes the deemed approved status, and then there's an amendment or consideration of the amendment at a future hearing on the conditional use permit, you could incorporate that operations and management plan into the conditional use permit and have those procedures specified for registration.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, any other questions for staff? All right, at this time, let's open public hearing. Do we have any speaker cards?
Yes, we have a total of 2. If I can first have Pusha Patel.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Pooja Patel, and I represent the hotel operator of the Best Inn in El Cajon. From my review of the information my client has provided me and the actions that he has conducted, I can assure you that this hotel operator is committed to ensuring a safe property for the community and complying with the law. My client has been working with the city since 2021 to mitigate nuisance activity and criminal activity at the property. Some of the actions my client has taken since 2021 include installing new RFID door locks on all of the guest room doors, upgrading his floodlights in the parking lot to 300-watt LED lights to improve visibility in the light and to also allow for the security cameras to pick up on any activity that is going on the exterior of the property. In September of 2021, the hotel operator also seal-coated the parking lot to also improve the condition of the exterior premises and to avoid any loitering or nuisance activity. In November, he installed 20 cameras around the property in response to help the police department tackle crime across the street and at the IHOP that is adjacent to the property. Unfortunately, on March 29th, 2023, an alleged illegal drug sale occurred. And as mentioned previously, this person was stopped at the traffic light, stated to the police department that he was staying at the Best Inn, and you heard from the police department what occurred. However, only 2 of the arrested individuals were registered with the hotel. The hotel was not aware of the other 3 and had not had any record of those guests staying in the property. Importantly, the 2 registered guests, the first one was a part of the Equus voucher program and had been staying there for a couple of days. The other one was a local walk-in who had only stayed for 1 night. Thereafter, the city issued the notice of violation, and my client took the following steps. They designated a hotel employee to clean the parking lot every hour and to ensure that the parking lot was free of any trash or debris. They also became very extra strict about requiring all guests in the room to register. So usually at a hotel, only 1 guest registers and then they have other guests in the room. At this point now, all guests are required to register. Anybody who is coming in and out of the room or in the room have to register. And failure to do so will conclude in that guest being removed from the room and no refund being offered to them. And with the security cameras now at the front desk and the front desk constantly monitoring the security cameras, they can see any activity that's going on in the guest rooms or people coming in and out, and then, of course, checking the system to see how many guests are registered to avoid this issue in the future. They've also hired a security patrol company that works from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and then they are on call 24 hours a day and are responsive within 5 minutes of a call. As alluded to earlier, they've also ordered an extra hard drive so that police department has access to security footage for 30 days as opposed to a week. And the human trafficking training has also been completed by the resident manager, the hotel operator, the housekeeper, and then the last one is the front desk clerk who has been out sick, so unfortunately he hasn't completed his training, but he will once he's back in office. And as of April 30th, the hotel operator removed the sign attached to the trash enclosure, removed outdoor storage, removed the storage materials, removed the fence alongside Oakdale Avenue, and then as of today, the full exterior of the building has been painted, and the walkways are to be completed in the next 2 days. As for the 54 calls for service in the last 12 months, we also asked for a police call log from the police department, and they issued one to us April 11th, 2023. And by my count, there was really less than 10 calls that were really determined as criminal activity. And as of this year, there's been less than 5 calls per month. And I have a breakdown of the number of calls and the call types that have come in. If you're interested in looking at that, I'm happy to provide that. But based on the foregoing, we do request that the commission does not revoke the hotel's deemed approved status, and the property is allowed to continue working with the police department and the city to continue doing further actions to mitigate nuisance activity. But I do think that at this point, the hotel has taken many steps to try and control and avoid nuisance activity and obviously not use up the city's resources unnecessarily. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
First of all, thank you for coming, and I appreciate your corrective action that you've been taking thus far. One question I have is, based upon your corrective action, what has been the effectiveness of it to relieve the calls from El Cajon PD? Has it been negligible? Has it been effective? What is the property owner's take on it?
So it definitely, unfortunately, there's a bit of a risk of profiling and discriminating against guests who come in. And our clients have to walk a very fine line in not doing so. However, these measures that they have taken have reduced, loitering on the property. Obviously, keeping the parking lot clean of trash avoids people thinking that, this property, no one's taking care of it, no one's, surveilling the area, and then this is a prime location for me to conduct my activities. So I do think that these measures has helped reduce the risk of those activities occurring. But I do still think that there is a bit of an issue where there's certain situations where it's kind of out of the hotel owner's control or the staff's control and not being able to determine whether this guest that they're allowing to stay is going to conduct criminal activity in the room or not. And to speak to that a little bit further, all guests that register through the voucher programs, the hotel operator checks on Megan's List to see if they are any offenders, and they also check their do not rent list to see if they're listed on there before accepting that voucher. Aside from that, really we would look to the police department to help the hotel owner determine what steps that they should take, and also adding to their process of, think about these things or ask for these things at check-in to really determine whether you want to allow this guest to stay or not.
And the final question I have for you, if I may, you said that you're now monitoring what guests come in and out the flow. If you could say, how is that going? Have you been able to deter some people from coming in? I understand that you can't reject everybody that comes in, but if they have no business being there, what is your take on that? Speaking for the property owner, I understand.
Mm-hmm. There have been a few instances where the front desk or the security guard on site has seen activity of, guests coming in and out that weren't necessarily registered. That was brought up with the guest, and then those guests were registered with the room.
Yes, Commissioner
I have a
Sotelo.
question. The guests which are at the motel, approximately what percentage would you say is part of the voucher program?
I asked my client that question earlier today. It's about 1/3.
1/3.
Yes.
And also, do the owners or your client, are they wanting to continue in the voucher program, or do they want to discontinue that?
They would like to continue, but they are open if that's something that needs to stop. I know that there has been some commentary from the DOJ that refusing to accept vouchers could be an issue. So I would say that we would not want to refuse the vouchers as a blanket action.
Right. And on the voucher program, the agencies which are giving the vouchers, are they providing any background checks for any of these individuals who stay at your motel?
I'm not aware of what their process is, but I do know that they get a call and then they let the hotel know that we want this guest to stay at the property, and the hotel owner runs that name through their list and through the Megan's Law database, and then determines whether they want to allow that guest to stay or not.
One last question. I heard that some people, they receive the voucher, and then in order to make money, they sell that voucher to another individual. How would you stop something like that? Is an ID matched with the name on the voucher, or is there what?
Correct, yes. So anytime that the voucher program has a guest that wants to stay at the property, they notify the hotel owner that this is the name of the guest, and then at check-in, an ID has to be cross-checked with that name.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just interject quickly, just as it goes back to the revocation hearing, I just want to remind the Commission that we're here to look at the conduct of the motel operator, and any emergency housing related programs are really a fair housing issue, so that everyone has fair access to all available housing. So really our authority here tonight is to look at the conduct of the motel operator and make sure that they're complying with the requirements of the deemed approved lodging ordinance. We don't have any authority to regulate any outside programs. The city separately has been working on updates to the special operation license portion of the municipal code, which would require licensing of those operators that are conducting those programs, so that they can provide us with information on the people that they're servicing, as well as making sure that we're properly accounting for transient occupancy tax collection. So those are kind of the two areas of regulation that the city has. So on the operations side for the operator, and then only on the looking at the program operators on the other side. But when it comes to the access to housing, again, it's a fair housing issue, and we don't have the ability to regulate who does or does not participate in those programs.
Great, thank you. Yes.
Just a quick question regarding, I know it hasn't been that long since a lot of these things have taken place, but the incident happened back in March. Now through April, how many calls were in April? I know it probably needs a longer time to see if any of this has been effective by all the extra things they've done. But in April, how many calls, do you know how many calls have been to that establishment?
You know, the report that I have was issued on April the 11th.
Okay.
So unfortunately, I don't have a more recent log than that. I'm not sure if Noah, you do, or the police department does.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, we only we reviewed the calls over the last 12 months. I think one of the harder things to do is to be able to set aside a specific time period by which you measure that metric.
Yeah.
And I think that's partially the reason why you have the recommendation before you to revoke the deemed approved status. And then we can look at, and then if you schedule the conditional use permit hearing in approximately 90 days, we'll have that time metric to be able to look at the calls for service, and we can look at that and compare it to the previous 12 months and then see how the measures that have been implemented by the operator, how effective they've been.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, any other questions? Yes.
One last question was on, I believe the staff report mentioned was it a patio, extended patio, or has that been removed, or is there any plan to remove it or to bring it into compliance? What is the plan with that? And that's my last question.
Sure. So yes, the property owner is determining right now whether they want to remove it or apply for a building permit to bring that into compliance.
Okay, great. No other questions at this time. Appreciate you being here, and we look forward to working with you and the applicant.
You as well. Thank you.
Any other speaker cards?
Frank Stengler.
Good evening, Commissioners. How are you tonight? My name is Frank Stengler. I am one of the adjacent landowners next to the hotel that we're talking about tonight. The point I want to make, and I'm going to need your help. Could you pull up your map again that showed the hotel in your PowerPoint? That'd be great. Quick history about myself. I'm a retired veteran, came back home to San Diego. I have several rental properties in East County adjacent to this one. I believe that the hotel is an asset to the city. I'm not necessarily in favor of the conduct of the things that are going on there, but I do believe as neighbors, the vacant lot there and the Oakdale Avenue area right there are elements that are contributing to some of the problems this owner's having. I just recently drove by the vacant lot and seen that it was completely unlocked and open access, and there was people sleeping there. The city of El Cajon really counts on their first responders to be there where we need them. This isn't something that I believe our police need to be out there for every single episode. That's taken away from where we really need them. I would recommend to this council and the commissioners that we contact that lot order, and I represent the 3 houses next to it, and we clean up our areas. We secure our areas, and we manage them safe to eliminate the amount of transits that are going into the Oakdale area and the motel, which I think is contributing to a lot of the problems they may be having. I can say in the past couple years that the appearance of that hotel initially 3 years ago was horrendous. Went by there was mattresses, there was all kinds of stuff going out there, and when I would try and fill one of those houses with a tenant, they would go, "What's that?" So, from the outside, it's looking better. How it's internally running, I leave that and trust that to the commission to figure that out, okay, best interests. But as an owner in the area, I will do my part to maintain that area. I recommend that the vacant lot owner does their part, and maybe those other businesses in that area. Possibly some security guards to run off the potential problems they could have. You know, that would be my recommendation. I have no questions for the owner, and I have no questions for you, except thank you for your support, and I appreciate what you guys do here in East County. That's all I have.
Thank you. Yes, questions?
Hold on. What was your name again?
Frank Stengler.
Frank Stengler. First of all, thank you for coming. So as a adjacent property owner, just staying within the scope of our authority,
Okay.
Your contention is that the motel isn't necessarily causing the problem, it's the adjacent property next to it?
Well, there's the vacant lot, which is we've gone back and forth on what we were going to put there over the years, and I know Commissioner Anthony, he's seen a lot of proposals come through there in his 5 terms here. But there's a gate right there in the parking lot of the hotel, which is the access and the easement into that lot. That lot is not secured. So if there's anybody coming onto the property who's not a registered guest, their goal is to go in through the hotel access parking and into that lot. So that is unmonitored, unwelcomed people transiting through there.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other speaker cards?
No.
All right, I'll make a motion to close public hearing.
I'll
So
second it.
motion.
All right, motion made by Commissioner Moreau, second by Commissioner Edison. Please vote. So, Noah, when you did your survey out there, did you notice that gate open on that vacant lot?
I don't recollect seeing it specifically open, and I would have noticed it if it was open.
Okay.
I'm sure it does open and close periodically.
Yeah.
I think I would encourage anyone that sees someone trespassing on a property, you can contact the non-emergency police department phone number. When we have multiple issues of trespassing, we'll work with the property owner to have them sign a no trespass form, so that there's more authority for the police department to act in those circumstances. Additionally, it's a very busy area right there at the off ramp. So you probably also have homeless individuals that are congregating within the Caltrans right of way. So there's a lot of issues that are going on there, and we'll do our best to address all those. But I think the one thing that I would communicate to the public is that we don't always know unless you call us. So if someone's camping out there, we won't know that unless we get a phone call, and we're going to act and do what we can to remedy those issues as they come up.
Great. Thank you. Yes.
As a property owner on the other side of Oakdale, just past the Shell station, we've called the police because Caltrans property is basically a conduit from North 2nd all the way to Maine. And there are tents back there from time to time. We called them because somebody exploded a tent, not literally, but the contents of somebody's, everything they owned was just sprayed across the back of the easement there, right behind our house. And we were worried because we didn't know what happened. Like, did somebody die and they're rooting through his stuff? We didn't know. And then recently there was that fire behind the apartment complex, and the gate that you can't quite see on that map behind the Shell station, that fence gets repaired so many times a month, and they cut through and duck through again. So I'm very familiar with the transient activity in this area.
Sure. All right, any other comments?
I do miss that proposal we had. I know the property owner who had the proposal for building the townhomes in that vacant lot passed away before he could get things rolling. Do we know who the current property owner is?
I did not look up the current property owner's name prior to the hearing.
Okay.
Great. All right, fellow commissioners. Well, the interesting thing is that they do have a CUP, which would actually allow them to, come into some more general rules and compliance. They're obviously working in that direction already. They've done a lot of work over there. There's obviously still more to be done, but the fact that they do have a CUP that we can kind of shore up, I'm kind of in favor of staff's recommendation and having them come back and adding the correct conditions of approval for the CUP, because right now they're going to continue to operate. They're going to continue to improve it, and then we can just add all those metrics that we feel necessary into that CUP and tighten that up a little bit.
Out of curiosity, can the deemed approved status be reinstated? Like, we say we're suspending the deemed approved status and we do a review in 90 days. Would that be something that we would be able to say, you've come into compliance and you've surpassed the goal of the CUP, and would we be able to put them back into deemed approved?
So I would generally say that the deemed approved status was really, that ordinance was created in order to have a very general set of regulations that apply to all lodging establishments in order to ensure that they're appropriately operating and not creating nuisance activities. I think what we see is the the conditional use permit is a tool that we can have more robust conditions of approval that are directly associated with the property. I mean, from a technical perspective, I would assume that there's an opportunity to reinstate that deemed approved status. But I would say moving forward, if we were to bring the conditional use permit back and propose conditions of approval, we would just require the deemed approved ordinance standards as part of their conditional use permit. So I know it sounds like it's something important to retain, but it's really, from a planning perspective, it's really just a metric that sets the bar of the minimum standards that are appropriate. And so in this circumstance, we've determined that the minimum standards weren't working. We were having a lot of nuisance-related activities. So the staff recommendation is to take that, to the next step, and then let's get some more specific items in the conditional use permit.
Thank you.
Question, do all lodging establishments have CUP?
No.
That's what I thought. Okay. So the deemed approved was put into place because we did not have a CUP on a lot of these lodging establishments. Again, the Best Inn and Suites is somewhat fortunate that they did have a CUP, very, very limited one, because it allows them to continue to operate if we pull the deemed approved status, similar to the Motel 6. But I would agree that the CUP then allows us, I think the deemed approved was there to give us some sort of guidelines, like you were saying, in lieu of a CUP. But with the fact that they do have a CUP and it can be amended, I think that's a cleaner way to go.
I agree. I think the deemed approved status was an accommodation that we made for people who've been in business for a long time. Circumventing the CUP, however, if a problem did arise, then we go back to the CUP as the ruling factor rather than the deemed approved status.
Correct.
So it's the CUP gives us more flexibility, as Noah stated,
Right.
in regulating the motels.
Okay. So just to be clear to the applicant, because you do have a CUP, depending on how the commission votes tonight, it doesn't. You can still operate, and then it will just allow you to work with staff in coming into compliance and working on, noting all the stuff that you've done and what else needs to be done. So, okay.
This applicant has already put in a lot of work, and that's very impressive, and we appreciate that very much.
The other option is if things aren't done, then the next step would be that the CUP itself would be revoked. However, the city of El Cajon has never revoked a CUP, just so you guys are aware of that. So I don't see that being the case here as well. All right. Well, any other questions or deliberation, or do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
My motion would be adopt the next resolution in order revoking deemed approved status and directing the operator and property owner to complete certain activities within the next 30 days and to direct the staff to schedule a public hearing to consider an amendment or revocation, the CUP number 252, within the next 90 days.
All right. I'll second that. Motion made by Commissioner Sotile, seconded by Commissioner Moroz. Please vote.
Commissioner Moroz, can you vote again, please? Motion carries by unanimous votes of members present.
Great. So when we talk 90 days, you'll be working with the applicant, crafting the CUP?
Correct.
Okay.
So I'd probably anticipate that actually because of the scheduling of our meetings by month, it'll likely be the first meeting in July.
Okay, great. All right, well, you guys seem like you're about halfway there, if not further, so just keep working with the city. And we appreciate all the work that you've already done and continue to do. You bet. All right. All right, and at this time, are there any other items for consideration, staff?
No additional items from staff.
Okay. Any communication for staff?
I had a question that I forgot to ask last Planning Commission, and it was answered for me on Wednesday after last Planning Commission. I was going to ask, when is Aldi opening? And the next day I got a little card saying they're opening on Thursday. So It's open.
There we go. Finally. All right. Well, if there's no other communication, then I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Great. Motion made by Commissioner Moreau, seconded by Commissioner Circo. Please vote. All right. And meeting is adjourned. Thank you.